Hello, and welcome to After the Deluge. If you're new to the show, this is basically a podcast about Jackson Browne that goes album by album, starting with the first one, all the way up to the one we're going to talk about today, which is called Downhill from Everywhere. It comes out on July 23rd, and usually I start each episode with a Rolling Stone review, but there's not one on the site yet, so we're going to forego that, but we have a pretty special episode, so I'm not really worried about it. Our guest today is the ultimate authority on all things Jackson Browne. The guest is Jackson Browne. Somewhere midway through making this series, which just started with me recording interviews in the closet with friends and my cousins and my dad and stuff, I allowed myself the possibility of this episode happening, but I kind of never expected that it actually would. I'm elated that it did. It's a perfect way to wrap up this project, which really meant a lot to me. Huge thanks to Cree and Buddha and Jackson for making it happen. Before I move on, I just want to thank the guests by name who joined me. That's William Matheny, Ryan Page, Stephen Hayden, Kyle Cox, Dana Cox, Holly Gleason, Kit Rackless, Pete Francis, David Wild, Jonathan Bernstein, Anthony DeCurtis, and Angie Martosio. A couple of things. You can find me on Twitter at Routine Layup. My handle used to be my name, but I killed that account. You can also email me at justincox22@gmail.com. And now onto the album. We start this conversation with the new record, Downhill from Everywhere. I kind of wanted to maintain the style of this podcast, and that is an album-by-album approach, and the new album is Downhill from Everywhere. Pretty quickly from there, we expand beyond the album and just sort of look at his work and his life. I mean, we go all the way back to high school, and then through those early albums in the 70s, all the way up to, like, Somebody's Baby and thinking about the value or merit of a pop song. He's not like a canned response kind of guy. You can tell he's kind of exploring and wandering as he answers questions. I choose to find some similarities in that to the songs he writes, which kind of never have an answer. They're always sort of like probing around with more questions, which is something I absolutely love about his music. And if this is your first time hearing the show, you should go back and listen to the rest of them. There are like 12 episodes there that cover 40 or 50 years, and that'll bring you up to current day, starting in like 1972. I like really enjoyed going back to this process of making one of these episodes, like mixing all the songs in and everything like that. I don't think I could ever articulate how valuable this process was during the super weird summer we had last year. The following is my conversation with, to quote the great David Wild, that beautiful poet child, Jackson Browne.
The Dreamer was a song that I tried to write, I don't know how many years ago. I've tried to figure it out, but I can't remember. It was a song that I tried to write about the Klan, which was very active in the Southwest as well as the South, was down on the border trying to prevent illegal aliens from coming across the border. And that was the opening line of the song. You know, well, the Klan's been down on the border. They say it's to keep law and order. And like, I just never could really get the thing to really, you know, like open up and speak to me. And years later, and then the next time I tried to write it was the Minutemen are down on the border, because the Klan wasn't doing it anymore. Now it was the Minutemen, another right-wing kind of vigilante group. And, you know, I thought the irony was that they were trying to uphold the law, but they were taking the law into their own hands, which is not, you know, that's not the law. So I couldn't get that far with it in this scenario, but I had the melody, and I showed the melody to this friend of mine, Eugene Rodriguez, and we were in the studio with David Hidalgo working on some stuff for an album that I was invited to sing on. And not to take too long to tell you the story, but he's such a great thinker, and he acts on his ideals and his principles, and he's an intellectual who acts. You know, And Eugene started writing about. He made it about someone who comes to this country to give her, you know, to make her future.
Just a child when she crossed the border to reunite with her father, who had traveled north to support her so many years.
To give herself to her a future that she could imagine, which is exactly what my grandmother did. This is exactly what all our forebears,
Yeah.
those of us who are not Native Americans. No, those of us who are not tribal people. That's exactly what our forebears did.
That's a good thing for us to remember.
It was for his group. We did it and released it as a single, for Los Senzontles, which is the group that I say he's an intellectual acts on his principles. I mean, he's got a cultural center for the children of immigrants from Mexico who need to learn the traditions and the history of their families, the art forms, the instruments, the dances, the recipes, the celebrations of their parents' homeland. Their homeland is the United States. They're from here. They were born here, and they're Americans. They need to know where their family comes from. Same way, like when I visited my Norwegian relatives in Norway, it was really interesting to see where my grandfather and my grandmother had come from.
Way cool. Yeah.
What life they were leaving behind and what life they expected here. But I mean, Eugene had the straight line right into and saying things that sometimes seem almost too direct, She pledged herself to this land and does the best she can. Now, you see, I can't write a line that simple.
She pledged her future to this land and does the best that she can do.
I can't write a line that good. It's just like I'm like, trying to imply things or like another thing, the song Love is Love was written in Haiti. And the part at the end where I'm singing about the priest, Father Rick, who I was working on this song with my friend David Bell, and who knows him very well, and who was the person who brought us all down there to make this record. I said, well, what should we, what do you say about, how do you describe Father Rick? He said, well, the father and the doctor to the poorest of the poor.
Nice.
It still brings a little, like sob, inner sob.
Here on the distant sunny shore of an island, all the troubles of the world seem far away. But here on the broken city streets of the island, people work and live and love and struggle every day.
That song, and similar to like Going Down to Cuba on the last one, they're this really buoyant, beautiful, like way to hear about a part of the world in a way that you don't normally hear about it. I mean, even just right now, like what we're hearing about in Cuba and everything, they're inherently very positive and beautiful. And it seems like a deliberate thing on your part to say, hey, let's talk about this side of this place.
Yeah.
I'm going down to Cuba to see my friends, down where the rhythm never ends, where by comparison my troubles just unravel. I'm North American, don't like to hear where I can't go.
You could tell me if this is true or not, but I find it to be a little bit of a recurring thing. There's stuff like Take It Easy was on a shelf, and someone like Glenn Frey or someone on the Eagles takes it and has like someone who probably speaks in those punchy ways. Or you say that you couldn't write a line as simple as the one that was put in that song you just mentioned, or you've talked multiple times about how Downhill from Everywhere, that phrase, that comes from someone else. It's like these, I feel like and I think the same thing was true with Somebody's Baby, right? It wasn't going to go on an album. It's a pretty simple song, like some kind of like mild hesitance on your part about things like that. But then a realization that like, damn, these things are impactful and they pack a punch, and just because they're simple that can mean they're better in their way,
Yeah, it took me a long time to like Somebody's Baby, but it was, It was a job. It was an assignment because Danny brought this thing to me. It was a very, very infectious guitar thing, and he had, it's like you can say whatever you want, but you got to end up with she's got to be somebody's baby. And I'm like, you start with that last line, and so, I mean, it was something that I thought was not as important. It wasn't as important to me as the other songs in that period are Lawyers in Love or Knock on Any Door. I mean, all the stuff I wrote for that record, and I think In the Shape of a Heart, it might be on that record, or is that on Lives in the Balance?
I love this.
Yeah, this is all blurry now. It's starting to like, so the point is it wasn't, I didn't think it was important. And so, but I did need to write that second verse, and it took me a long time to get to it. But really, anytime you sit down and work, it's like you forget about all that. And I remember sitting at the piano and coming up with the chorus, and I'm thinking, well, I like this. This is pretty good. I mean, sometimes you write something and think, I really like that. I don't know why,
Hell yeah.
but I got, you can't really, you don't look at from the end of the telescope because I'm going to end up here. You just set out
Yeah.
to embrace some subject, and in writing something like Somebody's Baby, I had a therapist who I was ragging on this song, and he was saying, I think you got this all wrong, man. This is about something important. Everybody wants to belong to somebody. Everybody wants to
Yeah.
feel loved, and this is the most fundamental thing. So why are you, man?
I love that.
We didn't sit around talking about my songs all the time. He just had to point out to me. But I think it was maybe something that he might have noticed too, that I am trying to explain things to myself. You're trying to describe life to yourself, and sometimes that description happens just in the act of doing anything, and you catch sight of it eventually and go, oh, that's what I'm doing. That's what it looks like.
She's probably somebody's only light, gonna shine tonight. Yeah, she's probably somebody's baby.
It's a cool job to have because, on one hand, you're supposed to, you're supposed to show up and do all this stuff that you think is like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that whatever thing you think is important about yourself is probably not the important part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's honestly something that has drawn me to your music. And I think a lot of people, and it's kind of, I think it's a beautiful thing that you're in your 70s and putting out this record, and songs like Still Looking for Something and A Little Soon to Say are just as sort of uncertain and searching, and sort of, there's nothing prescriptive at all. It's sort of like a perpetual sort of like figuring it out, maybe with full knowledge that never fully will. Like, should I still be in this city? I've been the stuff about being in LA and looking to leave the city your whole life, but still being there, but loving it, but also, I don't know, I identify hard with that. I love that.
Yeah.
And the idea that's one thing to be singing about when you're in your 20s. That's pretty profound when you're in your 70s, I say that as a person who perpetually kind of doesn't totally know what to do next, even perfectly happy in the place I am, constantly thinking about.
Where are you, by the way?
I'm up on Orcas Island in Washington.
Orcas. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Actually, so I do communications for a marine science organization up here called the Sea Dock Society. And so last year you put out Downhill from Everywhere. And I was putting an event together and everything. And we have a science director who's like, he's a great scientist and everything, but has an extra eye towards sort of like the storytelling and communicating and kind of like activating people. And it's not an activist organization. It's purely like a science-based organization, but like the area here is called the Salish Sea, but only like 9% of people know what the Salish Sea is. And so my job, I'm the communications person. Part of my job is like, get more people to know what the Salish Sea is so that they can care about it. And there are 8 million people here, and out here on Orcas Island, it's easy to be like, Salish Sea is right there. I live on it. But in Seattle and all these places, it's less so, but you need them to care. And what's kind of beautiful is like, if you draw a line around the Salish Sea as an ecosystem, its borders are like the tops of the ridges of the mountains. So everything that comes down from that into the water, like that's the ecosystem,
You know about Algalita and the Algalita Foundation and Captain Charles Moore?
Only from what I've heard you talk about in interviews about the song.
Yeah, I've met him a couple of times. He's great. I mean, imagine being an oceanographer and like he's motoring across the Pacific, and he realizes he's just like, where'd all this plastic come from? He's just like, he happens to motor straight through the North Pacific Gyre.
This is the garbage patch, right?
Yeah, and he's the one that kind of like brought it to everybody's attention. But he's also the way of summing things up by saying the ocean is downhill from everywhere. It really brings you it brings into focus the fact that everything that humanity does produces waste that has got to go someplace, and that is going into the ocean or landfills. And even the landfills, I mean, it doesn't go anywhere. The plastic that we,
yeah,
it doesn't go anywhere. There's no way. It became like a sort of like a sequel to the song I'd written called If I Could Be Anywhere, which was a song that started out to be about surfing and just like being in the water and suddenly finding out that you're like, that you're in a bunch of plastic garbage.
You have to admit it's clever, maybe the pinnacle of human endeavor, when things are made to throw away but never made to disappear.
I was showing that first, everybody knows I was sort of in my cabin writing this song, and I was trying to get it somewhere with it, and I actually played a little bit of it when I sang. It was in the Galapagos, and I was on a gathering called Mission Blue that was Sylvia Earle's prize at the TED Talks. Dr. Sylvia Earle, I'm sure you know who that is.
Yep.
She had brought everybody together to try to communicate the shape that the ocean is in and the dire need for creating marine protected areas. Anyway, I was trying to write this song. Anyway, somebody, and like she's fantastic with words. She talks about things like the blue heart of the planet, and Charles Moore saying, downhill from everywhere. They're just really great communicators sometimes. And
Downhill from everywhere, downhill from all you see. The ocean is downhill from gravity. Downhill from here, downhill from everywhere, downhill from all.
to be involved, and then I got so many invitations from those ocean advocates and oceanographers to go join them on their boats, and I think, wow, that's to go out for a month at a time, to be collecting data and to be immersed in it's a really great life, I think.
Well, if you're ever up on Orcas Island, we got a boat.
Yeah. I had friends that used to go to Orcas every year. Craig Durgee and his wife Judy.
Someone told me when I was doing this podcast here, I was at like a bonfire, and they're like, "This guy used to play with Jackson Browne, lives here." And
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never talked to him. No idea. But
Yeah. He's got a cabin up there, I think, and I think that I don't know if they still go there. They think, or they still have it. I should ask them. Yeah, Craig and Judy. One time, Craig. Craig and this other musician got set adrift somehow. They got in a boat. They couldn't quite get it. Without the motor didn't work. There were no oars like that, and they literally drifted away from the dock and were drifting out to sea.
Yikes!
From Orcas. It was a big event. I just didn't know. People, I heard about it later. It was just one of those, seeing the dock receding, and then pretty soon the island is receding. And you're just out there. And this guy, oh man, what's Tim's name? This great bass player who played with Crosby, Stills and Nash, and had also played with James Brown as a kid.
Sweet. Tim
Drummond.
Nice.
But our relationship to the natural world is pretty tenuous. We've sort of made a place for our species to thrive, but we're also severing. We're sort of severing the lifeline there. I mean, we're like making it impossible we need the ocean to survive here, and if we don't make it, the ocean will still be here.
The thing you did that's, I think, really cool about this song is that, like, that phrase "downhill from everywhere," it's kind of power is in its simplicity, and then you take it and this is the idea that you could call it any kind of like political or activist song, even really an environmental song. It's literally a song saying we live uphill from the ocean. So if you put a thing down, it will go down in this direction. And so you took that phrase, and the rest of the song that you wrote around it is in keeping with that simplicity. Just downhill from the prison, downhill from the mall, downhill from the factory farm and the hospital, downhill from high school, downhill from the gym, downhill from the church and the stadium. I mean, there's nothing politically said there. This is the world, and where do the things go when we let go of them? I think there's something impactful in that. And go for it.
You're giving me great pleasure by reciting those words and by putting it like that, because I think the job was to sort of do exactly what you're pointing to, which is to make people see those things without feeling that they're being lectured, or that you don't have to pay attention. If you pay attention to my lyrics, it should pay off. But if you don't, you should also really enjoy the song without Even if you only get half of those, even if you get some of the, this is the way it is with rock and roll. Sometimes you just like that part of the song that you like, and you don't listen very closely. But yeah, I wanted I wanted to make a song that you
They
did.
come into your house?
Yeah, coming from me. I wanted to make a song that you don't have to listen to linearly. It's got to be infectious enough that when you do hear it over and over again, you eventually hear all the song. And this is true of all the great songs that other people have written that I've taken into my consciousness. There's a moment in time when I was hearing Like a Rolling Stone probably for the thousandth time, but it was also like the first time.
Yeah.
And I suddenly was old enough or experienced enough to get a whole other layer of understanding about what otherwise they were just really infectious images, and that Dylan was always really great for that. And I like that you could say that fast, read it as fastly as you just did, or that I could sing it as fast, and that it would then sit there for a moment, and then you could hear some, like all that was like, that's where the craft comes in,
Yeah. I mean, it accomplishes a similar thing to like what you do in The Pretender, which is like these descriptions of places and kind of repetitive daily life, like, and which are really some of the most like familiar things we have, not super artistic on the surface or whatever.
We'll put our dark glasses on, and we'll make love until our strength is gone. When the morning light comes streaming in, we'll get up and do it again. Get it up again. I'm gonna be a happy idiot and struggle for the legal tender, where the elves take aim and lay their claim to the
But now in this one, it's like, here are all the places you go. You literally live out your days, and here's where the waste from that trickles. And I think it's great. You're talking about writing in this way, the way you're just describing writing this song, early on in the process of writing, like when you're much younger, were you thinking about stuff that way, or were you just writing? What was your approach then in these like early days of songwriting? Like, do you know what you're writing about when you sit down to write, or do you write and find what you're writing about in that process?
A lot of what I think about happens like in a car, it could be like, you don't have the chance to sit, you have to try to remember it or like think, put into a song later, or the shower. A lot of it's like, but I mean, I remember thinking, like, for instance, here's a thought. I thought at one point, I'm going to get some land and I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm just going to put it aside. So like nothing, so it'll just always be what it is. And I had that thought on the freeway between Orange County and LA. And I used to drive that stretch of road every day because my friends and the life that I was drawn to was in Hollywood, and my friends were in a band, and I was, and they had this incredible band house they all lived in, and I was welcome there. I was drawn to that. And another time I remember, like, and I was coming down from acid, and I was like, I was lucid enough to drive. I was okay to drive. I got on the freeway and I thought, wow, this freeway is like an artery. Look at all the taillights were like red cells and all the headlights were like white cells. I'm going, wow, I'm part of this really big, this enormous organism. And I'm this little piece of consciousness being like flowing along these, I wound up getting to Hollywood, and they were like very welcoming to me. And there was a whole other bunch of people saying, "Oh, this kid's coming. He's coming from Orange County. He's going to join us tonight." And it was like, and I remember I don't know how you get that in a song. I just think that a lot of the stuff that
are we talking Pretender there?
No, this would have been before all that. This was before I ever made a record. This would have been like when I was 18 or even 17 or 18.
Yeah, because your family was down in Orange County, and so you were there.
Yeah. My mom still lived there, and and eventually she moved to Silver Lake. So she moved to, in out of Orange County herself. She was drawn to, there were better activities for her. She was a Unitarian, and she liked the, what was going on in LA. And I think it was also work. She could kind of work. She was a teacher, so she could kind of.
Yeah, she was actually my uncle's teacher.
Really?
In the San Fernando Valley.
Right. At
I can't remember the school. I think Pacoima, maybe. I don't know. That's high school, maybe, or Poly High, or I don't know what grade she taught.
Poly.
Yeah, that's where my dad went. So my family's my cousins and stuff are all real big, like Jackson Browne kids. They had this like greatest hits record that I heard I'm Alive a lot in my house as a little kid. And that was sort of passively consumed, and then come to high school. I remember taking this road trip down to my cousins and I used to always camp in Leo Carrillo, like they're north of Malibu, south of Ventura.
I love Leo Carrillo.
Yeah, it's a real close place for my family. And so my dad got real into the Pretender. I think he said that they played the full record on the radio one time and he was like, holy shit, this is it for me. And then that kind of spread through all my family and kind of became Jackson Browne kids. And so I learned in that process that they said that your mom was one of their teachers, and then also a neighbor, my wife's neighbor, Eileen. What's up, Eileen? Big fan of this podcast, big fan of Jackson Browne. I learned. So my wife's parents' neighbor is now one of my good buddies because we bond through Jackson Browne. And I think that maybe her husband went to school, had a class with you in Orange County at some point. So that's fun. That's fun stuff for me.
I'll tell you something funny. Greg Leese, who plays all over this record, who played on, he's kind of new to my band, but I've known for a while. We went to the Sunny Hills High School at the same time. We didn't know each other. Somebody just gave me the annual of the yearbook, and there he is. I wish I'd known him then. We had one friend in common, but we somehow didn't meet each other. That friend in common was a very big musical influence on everybody I knew. So it's not surprising that he knew him. But Greg wound up being in bands and playing, very, very soon after high school, was playing in country bands and playing pedal steel and playing in roadhouses and stuff. And he's just such a great musician, and he's really all over this record. But he also, I kind of became friends with him because I told him that my friend Greg Copeland, who was also somebody who went to high school, was looking for somebody to help him make a country record. And Greg is a poet. And the guy that was sort of mentored me in high school, he was like 2 years older than me. And he was the guy we'd hitchhike. We'd all get together and hitchhike up the coast and go visit Greg and sleep on the rug at the house. He had a room in, as a student at San Francisco State. Anyway, he continued writing songs and it became a singer and would make these albums. And it's the most incredible sort of esoteric records because he doesn't have a career as a singer.
Yeah. Can you find his music? You read like one of these poems in the documentary of his about like the seagulls and like it ends and you're like, that's bad. And it's like, fuck yeah, that's bad. That's so cool. But like I Googled him and couldn't find anything.
Seabirds fly at their own worthy levels. I actually know this by heart. I love this. Seabirds fly at their own worthy levels. A dozens of dolphins at home in their sea, and I at my altars am hastened by devils to angels who cannot surrender to me. Bad, huh? Copeland. Greg Copeland is the guy that made me want to write songs. He and Steve Noonan were...
Am I right that he's one of the like traveling folks on the Song for Adam?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I drove across the country with him and Adam Saylor.
Though Adam was a friend of mine, I did not know him well. He was alone into his distance. He was deep into his well. I could guess what he was laughing at, but I couldn't really tell. Now the story's told that Adam jumped, but I'm thinking that he fell.
He made a record that Greg produced, that Greg Leese produced, because I told him, I just ran into Greg, and this is before I knew that he had anything. He didn't tell me for years that he'd gone to the same high school as me. I was like, what? What are you talking about? He went to, but before that, I just noticed him because he could play. I saw him playing with Joe Cocker, and Jim Kellner was in the band, and I thought, who the hell's that? He sounds like David Lindley, because he was playing a Weisenborn, You know, that lap steel guitar that's got the hollow neck, the same thing that Ben Harper plays, that David Lindley plays, that
Yeah.
he was playing his Weisenborn. I thought, God, he sounds great. And oh yeah, and Keltner said, oh yeah, that's Greg Leese. And I'm like,
Cool.
Everybody gets lonely, feel like it's all too much, reaching out for some connection, or maybe just their own reflection. Not everybody finds it, not like the two of us. Sometimes all anybody needs is a human touch. Sometimes all anybody needs is a human touch.
everybody who's really a working musician might get a really great job with somebody that pays high, but it doesn't mean that they're not still living kind of hand to mouth and have to take every little job, have to take no job too small. Most musicians I know are totally accessible in terms of, you know, can you come play this afternoon for $50? It's like that kind of, you know, I mean, I pay, just incidentally while we're on the subject, I mean, I pay them double scale, pay them like I always have paid them, because the records sell a certain amount, I have an income, and I'm organized in that way. So I don't ask for these great players to play inexpensively, but it's just great that they're available to play for any amount of money, because it's priceless. It's in a way they're not paid what it's really worth. Like if somebody, like I had this thought just yesterday, because I was listening to a version of My Cleveland Heart that doesn't have Greg slide on it. And it's just Val and I playing. Val and I wrote the song together. It was just like at home. You'll hear it eventually. I think it's going to come out soon. It's just a version of he and I playing and singing the song. It takes two people to sing the song, but it also, we're playing it, and when it needs a cowbell, you have to have the cowbell, otherwise none of it hangs together. But listen to it and saying, wow, this is really, I'm really missing the Greg. And how do you pay somebody for playing great solo on your record? That publishing doesn't cover that.
That slide rips on that song.
The slide is so infectious, and that's why it's doing so well. That's why you can listen to it. It comes on immediately, and it's really, because at one point that was the first song that we recorded for this record, and it was recorded so long ago that we didn't look at it for a long time. And then when we had made a bunch more of the record, we were playing it along with everything, and we just, Val and I looked at each other when we listened to this and said, well, and Val was playing some slide thing. There was like, just the chords themselves are very infectious. You know, all that.
Yep.
That's so. I mean, there's the songwriting and the way it gets credited, and the publishing and how that gets divided up. But no one really pays for the great solo. Doesn't get, like, there should be a whole separate piece of the money that gets, not that anybody's getting paid very much anymore, and that's a whole other issue, but anyway, what Greg added to that song is undeniably great, and he's just it's great to have all these players that are available to you, because you can't really pay somebody to come in and be a genius, you know. Can you come in and like play an iconic guitar part on my song? You know, it doesn't work that way, but you can. You know, they engage in a search with you. They're looking for something. You're looking for something, and sometimes usually someone like like Mark Goldenberg, it's exactly what he does. He comes up with he's played like my example would be like the solo on "I'm Alive." The solo on "Sky Blue and Black." They have to be played that way. The song has, without those parts, the song doesn't sound complete. You know.
The sky was unfolding, and it'll never fall back. Sky blue and black.
To that end, can I ask about, so I was in college when kind of like the rounds of solo acoustic records and tours and stuff like that you did, and I went to a few of those, and sometimes it's like, oh my god, this unearths a whole different thing on the song for me, and then sometimes it's like I don't know, mostly I just loved it. But those experiences of doing those solo acoustic tours, what's the process of revisiting old songs in that way for you? And also, why do you have like 10 guitars up there? Are they tuned differently, or what's happening there?
Yeah. Well, the guitar thing first. Yeah, they're all set up to play in different tunings, and without which I can't even. Well, it gives differentiation between the songs. Otherwise, if you were hearing the same voice singing the same songs, all these songs on the same guitar, it adds to it the sameness of it. Whereas if they're different guitars, they do. And the thing is about guitars is that they all sound good they all sound good, but they all sound really good doing one particular thing.
Yeah.
Even so, like there's like a new guitar I got that is like, I was using it for something the other day. I thought, this is not that good for this, you know. But I pulled it out the last night. And I thought, God, this is such a great guitar. If you do this, it's like, wow, it's like a spectacular. So all these guitars get sort of, their best qualities get identified through the course of time and using them. And then it's like there's one, like there's a guitar up there that's only gonna play one song, if I play it.
Yeah.
And and that's Too Many Angels, and it's tuned to a really E minor tuning. I could play Too Many Angels on an E major tuning and just tune one string down a little bit, but it just happens that the thing I play would not sound as good.
There's an angel on a ribbon hanging from the armored door. There's a cupid with his feet crossed on the birdcage by the door. There's a baby angel drummer, his eyes are open wide, and two more tiny cherubs on the mantel side by side.
You've identified a particular thing that sounds good doing it, and then also they're just at the ready, so you can grab it without having to.
It was effortless. There was something I absolutely loved. Like you said, you don't know if you're going to play the song because is it going to get hollered out from the crowd, kind of. Yeah. And then it's just sort of like a get up, wander over, grab the right guitar, start playing the song, maybe wander over to piano. It's sort of like the perfect loose evening.
I sort of realized that from Neil Young having a bunch of instruments in a circle, including a pump organ and all those things. I thought, well, that's a really great way of doing it. So you can just do whatever you feel like doing. But it got out of hand. Pretty soon there's 18 guitars up there, and it's also like pretty ostentatious. It looks kind of like, it looks a little bad, but
you got a slick back there. Yeah. David Lindley did that too when I saw him, except it's just a bunch of instruments I don't know, I have never heard of, and I don't know what they are.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's a way of getting to the essence of a song, because some of these songs, like say, "In the Shape of a Heart," was written in standard tuning, meaning I'm going dun 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 dun.
Was a ruby that she wore on a chain around her neck in the shape of a heart.
I mean, I'm just playing like a regular guitar, but it doesn't sound like much. And I had to find a tuning, and it turned out to be this E major tuning that I could play. And I had to learn how to play it in that tuning. But then I was able to play da 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 gong 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 da 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 da. I was able to play these open strings and make this thing sound a little bit bigger. And that gave me the chance to play this song well by myself. But it's a hard one to play, actually. And some of these songs are really hard to play by myself. And sometimes I listen back to these solo shows. I said, oh, God, somebody tackle me next time I start to go out there and play these by myself. It's like, you need a drummer, you need a bass player, play these songs. But here's the thing. Other people have told me, like a really good friend of mine who's a gallerist in Pacific Grove said, I said I was going to do a show. And she said, oh, great. Well, are you going to play with your band or are you going to play by yourself? I said, well, I'm going to play with the band. She said, okay, well, I'll wait for you to come around by yourself. And I'm like, what's that? She said, well, I just think something happens when you're up there by yourself that doesn't happen with the band. And what you really sort of imparted was that when I'm on stage with the band, I'm up there with them. I'm with them. We're together. We're up there and we're relating to each other. If I'm all alone, something else happens that is not covered up, or that is not impeded by relating with others. So there's happens to the songs that, like, in the starkness of them,
100%
pure songwriting. You get the pure intent of the song, provided that I can get it, that I can play it in time, sing it in tune. It's like a more of like a recitation, I suppose. And
I think even then, I think part of what your friend is getting at is like, for you, you're going to look back and assess a recording of that a little differently than someone else. But anyone else, I know this was the experience for me. Anyone else is going to go to that show and like the part of the beauty is in the spontaneity and imperfection and certain cover song and sort of, I mean, I know as a person who's forgot my share of lyrics, I love that kind of stuff. That's if anything, that's like, okay, I'm not getting the, like, I never enjoy when someone says like, oh, this band's so good live, it sounds just like their CD. It's like, you don't want to sound just like their CD. That's not right. What right. Fun is that?
That's what's great about my band is like we do creditable versions of the songs. We try to make it sound very faithful, but really, like they're gonna change it up. It's gonna be different because it's just a different day, and they're really good at, like, the two guitarists were particularly really good at joining up with each other and complimenting what the other is doing. They really are fans of one another. And they're like, if Val starts playing up something, then Greg just automatically plays a complimentary thing. And so it's and I said to Val one time, I said, you're so great at soloing. I love your solos. He says, yeah, no one really does it anymore. And I thought, did something happen that I didn't realize that? Really? Nobody? But I guess if you think about it, no. Like that is an old style thing to have there be solos.
I know that in my childhood, like, in the 90s, I was like exactly squarely in the spot where I think what happens is, like, take rock bands in the 80s, the solos get bigger and bigger and crazier and more, it just becomes like kind of clownish and ridiculous. And so then you get like a Nirvana overcorrection that's like, if there's even going to be a solo, it's going to deliberately sound kind of like dissonant and bad. and so I think that it's like, it's all kind of reacting to each other. I know that I love a great solo, and then at the same time can very much be turned off by one that just feels like a big show off move,
it's a characteristic. You have to be willing to show off a little bit. We sometimes refer to what Val's doing as showing off, because you got to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, to his face, of course. I mean, it's just an affectionate way of, when Val solos, he might make it and he might not. He might not. He might crash and burn. It could be like, and it's thrilling to have him go out on a limb, a musical limb, and like find himself out there, and sometimes like swinging way out over the abyss and going woo, and coming back and being back on the solid ground. It's like pretty exciting for me, and that's what keeps it fresh for me. The band.
Yeah.
The band plays. And sometimes it's true also of the rhythm sections. There are times when these guys are playing something so solid and they're innovating, and they're doing something in a song they have. And if I turn around, and they'll be grinning at each other. They'll be like, we found something here. It's like, cool. You like that? It's like, it's fun being in a band. It's really, I wish I'd been in a band in high school. Like I say, I wish I'd known Greg Leese and gone off into the,
I respect you wishing that's what happened, but I'm perfectly cool with the way it did happen.
Yeah.
Do you actively seek out young artists like Phoebe Bridgers and Blake Mills and Dawes, or does that sort of come to you?
It just happens the way you meet anybody. Funny, I just found a photograph. You know how your phone will sometimes give you a little slideshow? I don't know I'm an ignoramus when it comes to the phone. It suddenly started, and there was this picture of Tal Wilkenfeld and this bunch of people I don't know, and then a picture of Phoebe and her friend Marshall Vore. But I don't remember it being, that's not the time that we met, but it might have been, I don't know. It's just like, I think, did I meet her even before I remember meeting? Because I remember meeting her. She's very striking, but it was later that I heard her work and went, holy shit, that's that girl.
Yeah. I pitched an article about a Conor Oberst show that I actually never even got to write, but it got me access to the show. And then I just look up Phoebe Bridgers, never heard of this person, who's going to open it. And then she starts into this song Smoke Signals. And I just remember being like, holy shit, this is crazy. And you recently described like James Taylor's ability to like very quietly hypnotize a giant room. Yeah. It was that. It was like, oh man. And honestly, a lot of your early songs did that same thing to me. Sparse songs. I don't know.
Well, I'm sitting down by the highway, down by that highway side. The dreams are rolling down across the places in my mind. And I've just had a taste of something fine. How the words had all been spoken, and somehow the feeling still wasn't right.
I want to ask this because of this set of lines. It doesn't need to mean anything, but I'll let you go on this. These days I sit on cornerstones and count the time in quarter tones till 10. My friend, don't confront me with my failures. I've not forgotten them. You're 16, 17 years old. Does that have specific meaning? You know where you were? I love it so much.
These days I'll sit on cornerstones and count the time in quarter tones to 10. My friend, had not forgotten them.
Another imperfect line, another line that I didn't quite.
It doesn't need an answer, and maybe it's better not having one, if I'm honest.
Well, I would just explain to explain, does it have a specific meaning? I mean, I think people really that don't confront me with my failures. It's a little bit of this lines come from, stuff I was reading and stuff I was thinking. The idea of counting to 10 to try to calm yourself.
Nice.
But quarter tones. So counting in quarter tones means half tones are quarter tones is there's like it's like to count to 10 would be like to go like it.
Yeah,
What
cool.
the hell I was trying to say. But I mean,
Love it.
that's not the part. That's the kind of part that doesn't really come off. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody knows that that's what that means or that's what it refers to. But the thing about, I think people relate to the "Don't confront me with my failures." I had forgotten.
Yeah.
Writing songs when you're 16. That you got to remember, like what we listened to when I was 16 were Bob Dylan and the Beatles. John Lennon, Buffy St. Marie. Uh, that was before Joni Mitchell, but you could certainly include her and Joan Baez, who was a great and shortly after that, Judy Collins, who collected all these songwriters like Leonard Cohen and Joni Mitchell, or Tom Rush, who did like James Taylor songs. There was a way that people really listened, and it was a whole culture of lyrics and songwriting. So it's very different than it has been for a long time. And I think maybe some of that's back. You have Phoebe Bridgers, you have Taylor Goldsmith, and in the middle you've got incredible writers like Sean Colvin, Steve Earle. I mean, these are masters. These are people who've written songs that are indelible and who that are that live on in you. You hear the song once and it just, like you say, it hypnotizes you, and you suddenly that you take that on as part of your lexicon of meaningful thing.
Searching for a lifetime for what you wanna see, when all we've ever needed has been there all along inside of you and me. I wanna see you holding out your light. I wanna see you find your way beyond the sirens and the broken night, beyond the sameness of our day. And after what we've come to live with, I wanna know if you're okay. I've gotta think it's gonna be alright. It's just a little soon to say.
Thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks for making the music that made the show possible, and thanks for doing this. It was the perfect way to punctuate this little project. A lot of fun.
Thanks, man. I hope to get to talk to you again sometime, and by all means, Ireland or Orcas. And someplace. Okay.
I'm on Orcas. Hit me up.
Okay.
All right. Thank you to everybody for listening to the show. Downhill from Everywhere is available on July 23rd. If you want to hear the podcast I'm making now, just search And The Pitch anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can find me on Twitter @RoutineLayup. Look for any information from this episode in the show description, and thank you very much.